Hello, my dear friends. Today I want to tell you a story that sounds almost unbelievable. A story about a country that seems to ignore the modern world completely. A place that decided not to follow the same rules as everyone else. Imagine a country where there is no McDonald's, no giant shopping malls, no traffic lights, even in the capital city. And the government openly says that money is not the most important measure of success. Not how rich is the country, but how happy are the people. And this is not just a slogan, it is an official national policy. But before we talk about happiness indexes and strange economic ideas, imagine arriving in this country for the first time. Your plane begins to descend between giant mountains. The Himalayas surround the aircraft like stone walls. Pilots say this is one of the most difficult landings in the world. When the plane finally touches the ground and you step outside, you expect to see a modern city. But instead, you see something completely different. At first, it sounds like some kind of social experiment, but it's actually a real country. This place is called Bhutan, a small kingdom hidden high in the Himalayas between India and China. On the map, it looks tiny, but in terms of ideas, it might be one of the most unusual countries on the entire planet. Because while the rest of the world is obsessed with economic growth, profits, technology, and competition, Bhutan asked a completely different question. Wooden carved buildings, bright traditional patterns on the walls, architecture that looks centuries old. There are no glass skyscrapers, no giant digital billboards, no aggressive advertisements everywhere. Even modern buildings must look traditional. And that's not accidental. In Bhutan, there is a rule that all architecture must follow the traditional national style, even if the building was constructed yesterday. The government believes architecture is part of national identity. If cities begin to look like every other city in the world, the culture will slowly disappear. But the real surprise comes when you walk through the capital. You approach an intersection. Cars arrive from different directions. You wait for the traffic light to turn green, but nothing happens. Because there are no traffic lights. The capital city is Thimphu. And here, traffic is controlled by people. Police officers stand in small decorative pavilions in the middle of intersections and guide the cars using hand gestures, almost like orchestra conductors. And strangely enough, it works calmly and smoothly. But even more surprising is the way people dress. Men wear a traditional robe called go, which looks like a knee-length kimono. Women wear a long dress called kira, wrapped with colorful belts. At first, tourists think there is some kind of national festival happening, but no. This is just a normal weekday, because in Bhutan there is a rule. In government offices, schools, and official institutions, people must wear national clothing. For locals, this is completely natural. But the most fascinating part of Bhutan's story begins with one man, the former king of Bhutan, Jigme Singye Wangchuck. In the 1970s, he said something that shocked economists around the world. He said, gross national happiness is more important than gross domestic product. And from that moment, Bhutan became the first country in the world to introduce a completely different way of measuring success. Instead of focusing only on GDP, Bhutan created a system called gross national happiness. And this is not just a poetic idea. It is a complex system that measures the quality of life in the country. Experts study many different factors: health of the population, education, environmental protection, cultural preservation, community, trust, family relationships, leisure time, spiritual well-being. People are even asked questions like, do you feel stressed? Do you have enough time for your family? Are you satisfied with your life? And these answers help measure how well the country is actually doing. When economists first heard about this idea, many laughed. It sounded too idealistic. But over time, the world began to take the idea seriously. Because something strange was happening globally. Countries were getting richer. Technology was advancing, economies were growing, but people were becoming more anxious, more stressed, and more exhausted. And suddenly, this small Himalayan kingdom seemed to be asking the world a very uncomfortable question. What if development is not only about money, but if you think Bhutan is simply a peaceful paradise where everyone meditates in the mountains, the story becomes even more surprising. Because visiting this country is actually very difficult, and that decision was made intentionally. And the reason behind it might surprise you. Bhutan is one of the very few countries in the world that does not want mass tourism, which sounds strange. Most countries try to attract as many visitors as possible. Tourists bring money, jobs, and development. But Bhutan chose a different strategy. The government believes that mass tourism can destroy culture. So they created a system that limits the number of visitors. Every tourist must pay a special fee of about $200 per day to stay in the country. Yes, per day. This price usually includes accommodation, food, transportation, and a licensed guide. But the real goal is not profit. The real goal is to control the number of tourists. The idea is simple: better fewer visitors who respect the culture than millions of tourists turning the country into another crowded destination. Because of this policy, Bhutan remains one of the most peaceful places on Earth. No giant tourist crowds, no massive resort zones, no endless lines of souvenir shops. Instead, there are mountains, silence, temples, and forests. A lot of forests. About 70% of Bhutan's territory is covered by forests. And this is not accidental. It is also protected by law. The Constitution of Bhutan states that forests must never cover less than 60% of the country, which means even as the country develops, most of its land must remain natural wilderness. Because of this, Bhutan has become one of the most environmentally unique countries in the world. In fact, it is known as a carbon-negative country. That means the forests absorb more carbon dioxide than the country produces. In other words, Bhutan actually helps clean the planet's atmosphere. But the most interesting part of this story is still the people. Even though Bhutan is not a very rich country, the crime rate is extremely low. Many people still live in small villages. Life is simple: farming, family, traditions. In the evenings, people gather together, drink tea, and talk. There is no rush, no endless race for more and more. Of course, Bhutan is slowly changing. Young people use the internet. Modern technology is appearing. The country is opening to the world. But the government is trying to keep a balance, to develop but not lose identity, to modernize but not destroy culture. And this is what makes Bhutan so fascinating. It is a real experiment. Can a country develop without losing its traditions? Can technology exist without destroying culture? Can a nation measure success not by money, but by happiness? Bhutan is trying to prove that it can, and that is why this tiny Himalayan kingdom continues to intrigue the entire world. Thank you for listening to this story.